Welcome to the Grey Eye and Disability Arts online podcast, Disability And, bringing together thoughtful discussion and debate. This month, Joe Turnbull, Assistant Editor of Disability Arts Online, chats with Robert Softley Gale, writer, actor, activist and Artistic Director of Bird of Paradise Theatre Company about disability and the mainstream. This podcast contains strong language.
I'm here with actor, writer, activist and artistic director of Birds of Paradise, Robert Softley Gale. Welcome to the Disability And podcast, Robert. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. Good.
Good.
Yeah.
And basically today we're going to be talking about disability and the mainstream. I mean, mainstream is one of those terms that I feel like means something slightly different depending on what your position is to the mainstream.
Completely.
What do you mean by the mainstream when you're talking about the mainstream, do you think?
I mean, I think often the meaning of it has changed over the years. I mean, I've been working in arts and disability for 90 years. I feel like what it meant back then is quite different to what it means now. I think back then it was a euphemistic way of saying the people who made good work. They always spoke about disability work becoming more mainstream, and what they meant was it being a little bit less crap, you know?
Yeah.
And I think at some point we had to call that out and say, actually that is what you mean, you know, let's say that. Whereas now I think it means something different. Now I think we recognise that what big disabled artists has something to say that non-disabled artists can't say. And that we are something distinct, we are something outside of the mainstream. The problem with that is that every artist is saying something different, so you end up with so many different pockets that actually enter a mainstream with.
Yeah,
you know?
it becomes quite diffuse.
Yeah, completely. So basically I hope we move away from it being a euphemistic way of saying, of talking about quality. Because quality is quality, whatever you are in relation to the mainstream. You know, you can be crap and still be part of the mainstream. You know, that's not the good thing. But in fact,
there's plenty of mainstream crap.
Arguably, you're more crap if you're part of the mainstream. So, yeah, I think all of that doesn't really answer your question, but it's part of the issue.
It's interesting. I wonder if the sort of push towards professionalisation was a little bit behind that as well. I feel like there was a big push in the last 10, 15 years about professionalising, in inverted commas, disability arts.
I think also funding worked properly. Like 2012 was only 8 years ago, and all of the unlimited stuff that happened then, all of that money and that investment that happened then was massive, and I think we're still seeing the impact of that now. We're still seeing artists who were given substantial investment and still benefiting from that now. So I think, that's a massive impact.
I mean, for me, when I think of the mainstream, just as a concept, to me it usually speaks of something about mass appeal or appealing to lots of people, or even lowest common denominator, if you take that to its logical conclusion.
Yeah.
But when I looked up, just out of interest, I looked up the definition of mainstream.
Okay.
Because I thought it was worth looking, because that's just my conception in my head.
Yeah.
But it's quite interesting in a disability perspective, because the definition of mainstream is something that's generally considered normal, in inverted commas, or conventional.
God.
Which I think...
How boring.
I know. But that is so interesting in a way if we think about disability arts often defining itself in relation or opposition to the mainstream, then no wonder if the definition of mainstream is what's generally considered in inverted commas normal or conventional.
Because we're never going to be that, and finding a disabled artist who wants to be normal or conventional, I haven't met one yet, so, yeah, completely. I think it's a really working term as well, because it can be used by funders and by people with power to judge, but also to separate people and to go, well, you're closer to the mainstream than you are, and therefore we're making a value judgment about what you do, and that's something to be very wary of.
I also think, in terms of defining the mainstream, again, when I think about it, it's almost easier to think about what it's not than what it is.
And I think, like I say, I think the idea that disabled artists will ever be part of the mainstream really sort of bothers me. I think it's not something we aspire to. But I also, when you talk about normal or perceived to be conventional, I think back to things like the affirmative model disability, the example disability is normal. We're all in society, unless we get hit by a bus, are going to become disabled. So I think this is quite an question, because disabled people walk in this line between actually being the norm and being the state that we're all going to end up in at some point, but also rejecting the norm so powerfully and so, in some cases, so violently, I want to say, but not violence, but like a real, amongst the disabled artists that I know and work with and love, there's a real sort of real rejection of this mainstream, where we go, no, that's not who we are, we're over here and this is who we are. And I guess that's something as well, is that so much of our work, certainly my work, comes from defining myself and saying, well, this is who I am as a disabled artist, as a man, etc., etc. And once you start defining yourself as an artist, how can you be part of the mainstream? Because to give something definition is to describe it as what it is, rather than seeing it as the norm. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Have you had any first-hand brushes with the mainstream?
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever had any experiences where you feel like, oh, I'm in a mainstream context here, this feels weird, or maybe not?
Yeah, I mean, most recently, my life went for the show that we did the Fringe in 2018 with the National Theatre of Scotland, and it was a 90-minute big musical, singing, dancing. It was a very mainstream piece of theatre. We packed out to like 400 people every night who were all loving songs about plastic shields. So it was, for me, that was a joyous thing of taking a very mainstream form, but then subverting it in ways that people were not expecting. And from that, we were getting awards and going to ceremonies and stuff, and very much became part of the mainstream establishment with that show. And that was a weird experience, because in a way you realise that we're all pretending to be part of something. We're all pretending that we know what we're doing, but we're also pretending that we're part of this mainstream establishment, when actually you just got a bunch of artists and producers and other people trying to make work and trying to get on with it. And that's all we really are.
Quite interesting that you describe My Left Foot as quite a My Left Right Foot, sorry, as quite a mainstream show in some ways, that it's like a traditional musical, and Purposeless Movements is probably not a particularly mainstream show in its content, and yet that's the piece that was on the main stage. You know, there was the Edinburgh International Festival and sold out every night. As I know that you were saying, My Left Right Foot was also sold out, but in a way, Edinburgh International Festival feels a bit like, in theatre terms, it's like, that's quite a mainstream setting, but it's not necessarily a mainstream show, I don't think, is it?
Yeah, completely. Yeah, definitely. You can't get much more establishment, can you, than the Edinburgh International Festival. But I guess that the form of that piece was still quite distinct from what people were expecting. And that was the reason that I wouldn't describe that as being as mainstream. But again, it's, we're talking about gradients of mainstreamness, and that all becomes a bit weird as well, What do I mean by that? I probably mean that My Left Right Foot has more mass appeal for the purposes as a dance movement and theatre piece. Has a little bit less mass appeal, but we're still pretty much part of the establishment.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think either of those pieces were made with more mainstream audiences in mind when you conceived them?
Definitely My Left Right Foot was always, because it was made for Brooklyn Paradison's 25th anniversary year, so we very much make it as a piece that had to have quite a big impact on the sector and on Scottish theatre. So a musical became a very obvious thing to go for. I'm also, a long time fan of musicals, and I sort of keep that quiet because people...
Because it's not cool.
It's not cool, and it's a bit too mainstream, As a theatre maker, if you say that you like musicals, people go, you're not really a theatre maker, are you? So I kept that vaguely quiet for quite a while. But when it came to making a piece for a 25th year co-production with the National Theatre of Scotland, it had to be big and it had to have mass appeal from there. So musical became the obvious way to go.
Although I haven't seen that piece, from what I gather about it though, even though maybe it's a slightly more mainstream presentation, it seems like there's quite a lot of in-jokes that are ready for the disability community in there.
Yeah.
And so you're subverting it in that way a little bit.
And also the in-jokes are almost exclusively jokes about non-disabled people. And this is what I think a lot of people don't always get about my work, is that yes, I'm taking the piss, but I'm taking the piss on either of myself or of non-disabled people, because they're right to be taking a piss of. So yeah, against that thing, taking a form and taking a structure and a format that people are very familiar with, and then subverting it so they get something that they're not expecting at all. It's what we try to keep doing.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you think there's a tendency? I don't know. I go to a lot of conferences and talking shops aimed at the disability arts sector, or certainly with a good representation of that, and it does almost feel like there's something of an obsession with this idea of the mainstream. Do you think? Yeah. Do you think we're a bit obsessed with the mainstream in the disability arts world?
I think we have to go. I think a lot of sectors go through periods of maturity and becoming more mature, more established, but not necessarily more mainstream. But I think part of that is about comparing yourself to the others, to the establishment and to the mainstream. And I think that this work out movement still, I think we're beginning to come out of that phase. I hope we are. But I think we're still quite obsessed with how we position ourselves in relation to this mainstream audience and what we can give to them and what they want from us and all of those questions, which are all great questions to ask. as a theatre maker, I'm always asking the questions of what my audience want. But it's a, like, yeah, I think there comes a point where you have to go, bugger it, you know. They're going to get what they're going to get.
Do you think there's... I get a sense that some of the younger generation of disabled artists coming through are actually slightly more obsessed with this idea of the mainstream, because it seems like a lot of them aren't as connected to the rights movement that's come before, and a lot of them aren't actually versed in the social model and things. And so all that they've seen, you know, the culture that they consume is, they kind of come from a context of consuming mainstream culture and engaging with mainstream culture, and it seems like a lot of the younger artists coming through are kind of maybe more obsessed with this wanting to make it in the mainstream world, whereas those who've kind of been through that longer journey are a bit more of that approach of like, well, fuck the mainstream, 2 fingers to it, sort of thing. We don't need it.
Completely. Oh God, does that mean I'm part of the old generation now?
It's not necessarily about an old guard or whether it's the vanguard, I'm not sure.
That's a sad reality that I'm having to deal with. I very quickly went from the young face to the old vanguard. But absolutely, I think younger people now that have been in mainstream education, so they're growing up around non-disabled peers, and that's fantastic. That's, you know, what we were all fighting for decades, so it's great. But I think that it's definitely less of a disability identity amongst those young people. I'm doing a bit of work just now, making a show for 7 to 12-year-olds, and part of that is asking, you know, what it is to be a young disabled person in 2020, because you know, I turned 40 this year, so I'm definitely not a young disabled person anymore. And the problem I found with asking that question is that they don't always see themselves as disabled people, and that's a really... For me, as an older disabled person, that's a difficult thing to unpick and to go, well, what does that mean? You know, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? Or, you know, is it a bit of both? You know, probably. But I think there's definitely a sense of young disabled people, because they've been part of that mainstream from birth. Why would they now want to not be? You know, perfectly understandable that they've always been part of that. Why would they now step outside of that to develop their identity? Yeah.
But it definitely sort of gives us an insight into what we would lose if you don't have spaces that are disability specific and places where the disability community can come together. And if we're all mainstream, or it becomes so integrated that you don't have that, then you definitely lose something as well.
Completely.
So, of course, you know, inclusion and integration and things like that they have their upsides, but they definitely have their downsides, right?
Completely. But it's not either or.
No.
You know, and we need to hold on to that. The worry is that one becomes easier or cheaper to have than the other, so you end up with an either or. But I think as long as we hold on to our spaces as well. But I also, as we're saying that, I'm thinking, well, these things grow and develop organically. We haven't got a lot of control over how we all gather, and you know, so if we do start to lose our disability spaces, then either people will recognise that and fight to keep them, or they won't and they'll go. You know, they're sort of not, like, you know, for all we like to believe that we've got control over everything, we haven't really. We sort of have to go with the flow.
And in terms of listening and listening to those young voices, like in through projects that you're talking about there, and you know, we have to reconfigure. For each generation kind of needs to make its own way and follow its own path, doesn't it?
And also, you know, because in making this piece that I'm making for young people, I can only write from my perspective. but I can also recognise that that's different from their perspective, so I can help to give them a bit of a voice and start to reflect on how that's changed. But yeah, I am a 39-year-old disabled guy, like that's all I can really speak about. But there's quite a lot to that I can't speak about, so.
Yeah. Do you think, is there any sort of mainstream organisations, initiatives or things that you think are doing good work either with disabled people or around inclusion? I'm thinking Liz Carr on Silent Witness is quite a good example of...
Completely. And I mean, TV has made a massive step forward in the last sort of 5 to 7 years. We've seen, every soap now has or has had a regular disabled character. That's pretty big, When I started, that felt like a big dream. So we have put big steps forward. And yes, we have to work so that doesn't then get back, that we got then, I know that Liz is about to leave Silent Witness, So where's our next role model on sort of primetime TV who's disabled? We need to keep poking away at that. But I think we're now in a less perilous position. Before, it was 1 or 2 people that were holding it up for the whole disabled community. Now that there's more, we can relax a little bit and go, well, they're there, we're visible. And I think if tomorrow all disabled characters disappeared from soaps and from TV, people would go, wait a minute, that's a bit weird. Whereas 10 years ago, they weren't there, and that wasn't weird. So I think in that way we've won a bit of an argument. I hope we have anyway, So yeah, I think we'll definitely move forward, but we just need to keep poking away at it and keep having that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, if we think of sort of the most, I try and think of the most mainstream institutions or mainstream things like Hollywood and the Oscars obviously spring to mind, and year after year the Oscars has this big diversity conversation and disability is always left out of that diversity conversation, which it certainly feels like there's a big Rubicon to cross there. We're still not seeing that. We're still not at that very top mainstream table.
Completely. And that's where I feel like my record felt appropriate, because it was commenting on a film that happened over 30 years ago where a guy was tripping up. And we'll still get that now, we haven't moved beyond non-disabled actors playing disabled characters in Hollywood. One of the things that I always try to focus on is it's about the story that we're telling. And the reason that I make work is because the stories of disabled people haven't been told nearly enough. So they're not part of our culture nearly enough yet. And if you're making certain stages, if Hollywood or TV were telling these stories, then I could go back to bed and have a rest. But they're not, or when they are, they're doing it from a very non-disabled perspective. And that makes me go, well, what right have they got to try to hijack my story and use it to their own ends? My left foot is the one that I can speak about for years and years and go, well, at some level that was a story about Christy Brown, a guy with cerebral palsy in Ireland in the 30s and 40s. Like hijacked by Daniel Day-Lewis. Because whenever you talk about my left foot, you talk about Daniel Day-Lewis, you couldn't talk about Christy Brown. So, and that's the bit that irks me, because it was his story, it wasn't Daniel Day-Lewis's. And we always talk about great acting being about being invisible, about, the character becoming invisible, and the actor somehow disappears. Now, you can debate whether that's real, but when it comes to non-disabled actors playing disabled characters, they're never trying to be invisible. They're trying the opposite. They're trying to be recognised for how skillful they are at imitating, a cerebral palsy voice or movements or whatever. So, yeah, that's not acting. It would be my argument.
It feels even more problematic when it's problematic enough, but when it's based on, as you say, a real person and a real life story, it feels something even more problematic about that.
Totally. So looking at this makes an argument about film and Hollywood and going, well, no, tripping up just has to stop. We just, there's no validation for it. Yes, acting is acting. And you always get that argument of, but.
Well, so should a murderer play a murderer?
Correct.
And all that nonsense. Yeah.
And you're like, no, there's clear difference here because we don't see men playing women unless there's a reason for that. We don't see white people playing black people. So somehow we recognise that gender and race are something that you can't just imitate the other. And somehow that's fine.
Yeah.
But we don't see disability in that same category.
Yeah.
We still see disability in this sort of add-on, this and also that we see disability as not being able to do something. So if a non-disabled person can pretend that they can't do that thing, then they're disabled. Now we your listeners know that disability is a cultural experience, it's a work experience, etc., etc. But we still haven't quite got that over to the mainstream.
I mean, it is definitely based on a medical model of disability because it's true also that obviously it happens all the time. A non-disabled person acquires an impairment. So an actor can say, well, I might acquire that impairment, but you don't understand it doesn't mean you have the experience of disability as a social construct and as the experience of barriers.
And also, that experience of acquiring an impairment is something that I've never experienced. So, yes, you can look at that from an acting perspective and go, well, what would that be like? But it's a different thing to be born disabled. Mm-hmm. Again, these are all parts of the disability narrative and parts of the stories that we need to be telling people so that their understanding of disability becomes more nuanced and more complex and more interesting rather than the victim and the poor little cripple in the corner. If we can get to a point where our culture has thousands of stories of disabled people that are all different and contradictory and interesting, then we can start to have more interesting conversations about whose story it is to tell.
Do you think that's the best way we can challenge and change the mainstream? Just by telling more disabled stories? It's
all I know what to do. It's like, and someone said to me a few years ago, but do you think it works? And I'm like, well, if it doesn't, I'm fucked. It's all good. It's all I know how to do. And I also think there's no one way to do this. I think for some people it's about getting angry and protesting and yelling at people, and I absolutely respect that. That's not really my way of doing it. My way is much softer and much more about trying to engage people. And one or the other aren't right or wrong. We have to come at this from a whole variety of angles, and over time we will get there. We are getting there. We have to believe that we are getting there. It can sometimes be hard though.
Yeah. Too right. Do you think there's a danger that being in that mainstream position actually changes them rather than them changing the mainstream?
I think that can happen and that does happen. But I think that, again, I think we think we'll get more control over this than we actually have. Disabled people are such a wide variety of people, and we're all coming at this from different angles. And if your angle is to be a fairly mainstream politician who doesn't really wave the disability flag and just gets on with it, then that's still a valid way to do it, But equally, I've still got a right to say, that you should be doing more. We all have to do what we do. We all can stand up to the scrutiny that we stand up to. I'm not saying that we can't criticise people for what they do. And if people do become so mainstream that they almost forget the disability roots, then I think we've absolutely got a right to call that out and to question it. But we can't control that. It's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose what I'm saying by that as well is I'm not saying, because I don't think it's fair, that just because you're a disabled person in any position that you have to at all times fly the disability flag or be politically engaged all the time or fight for that community and be an expert and all those things, because it's an unfair expectation.
Yeah, completely.
And it's exhausting.
Completely.
But also, I think it's a bit like liberal feminism. The approach to it is just add more women and put more women in positions of power, and that will change things. And I think actually there's so much more to it than that. I don't think if we just put disabled people in top positions or represent them on stages, that will change everything. I think there's a whole other undertone that needs to be tackled. And there's an absolute cultural change that needs to happen.
Absolutely. But all of these things are part of that cultural change.
Yeah.
They're not the be-all and end-all, but they are part of moving it forward. They're part of normalising disability. To go back to your definition of mainstream, the idea of the norm, well, there is something to be said for, if we walked around and we could see 1 in 5 people being actively disabled, then we would see disability in a different way. We would know that it's not some other experience, it's everywhere. It's us, it's our family, it's our friends, etc. So visibility is a really important part to play.
Yeah.
But it's not the be-all and end-all. It's not visibility at any cost. It's not about assimilation, because that isn't actually visibility, or it's not real visibility. So yeah, there's no one answer to this. We have to be okay with that.
Yeah, I think a lot of these initiatives where they fall flat is they place disabled people in mainstream positions, and that's good. But if the culture of that place is set up in an ableist way, then it's impossible to expect that will change it by just putting them there.
Because they're all become about the individual, and then that individual moves on, and nothing actually changed, or completely. But we're playing a very long game here. This is not happening quickly. I mean, I started as an actor in 2002, so what's that, 18 years ago now. The change in the last 18 years has been huge. We can't underestimate how far we've come in those 18 years. We've still got a fucking long way to go. And both of those things can be true at the same time, and that's okay. We need to allow for nuance, we need to allow for a bit of complexity in this, and for contradiction.
Just a bit of a fun one. What's your biggest mainstream guilty pleasure?
What else makes me guilty pleasure? Probably something like Great Britain's Bake Off. We're coming so bland about getting COVID that you just can't help but love how massive you is. I get my uncle lives in America, but he grew up in England, and he loves it because nobody argues, nobody fights, like no, it's just so bland, but you have to love that. And I think, yeah, I think we all need to start embracing mainstream guilty pleasure a bit more, because again, it's not, the mainstream is not evil, it's not the enemy. And maybe if we start to see that we're not in opposition to it, then we'll be okay. But we're also not, almost by seeing it in opposition, we're holding it up in a pedestal. It's like a thing that we aspire to. And I think that the more mature we get as disabled artists, the less that becomes a thing. That we go, it's great, and it's there, and it's all fun and stuff. And we can do that, we can stick our toe into that pond. But it's not the be all and end all. I feel like they're taking your fun question and make it very philosophical. But yeah, so yeah.
And so if Great British Bake Off
go back to Bake Off, yeah.
If Bake Off come calling, will you be up for presenting it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Me and a young Hollywood would get on a house on fire. But yeah. Yeah, in fact, no, me and Candy Cockfish, I think, could be quite a funny combination.
Do you think you'd spice it up a bit?
I would give it a go. Yeah, there'd be a lot, I mean, there's already quite a lot of innuendo, but I think I could get a bit more innuendo in there. Because I've got the great advantage of I can make a joke and people can go, was that a cock joke, or did we just not understand his speech? So I've always got that game that I can play.
So they wouldn't have to bleep it out.
Exactly, because the BBC can go, oh no, it's California. They can go, oh, we didn't know it was a cock joke. And then anyone who complains becomes disabled, so we're fine.
It's an ironclad.
Exactly.
Bulletproof.
Completely.
Anything else you want to say on the mainstream
or
anything else?
A good thing. I mean, I think we're going to keep having this conversation for a long time, and that's fine. And I know that there are people who see the work that I make and go, oh, you're just a bit too mainstream, or a bit too. But then I also know that there's mainstream folks who see what I do and go, who the hell are you and what are you doing? So it's a subject that I'm always going to be interested in, but I also try to ignore and forget.
It's always a bit of a tightrope to...
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of disabled artists who kind of get to a certain level in their careers as well often feel that they have these two careers. They have a mainstream career and a disability arts career, and they have to play two different sides, and they might make work that's more geared towards one, and then they feel like they've got to go back to their roots. And
I think if you can manage it, and I try to manage it where the work that I make says something to non-disabled people that they're surprised by, and they go, wow, I've never thought of that before. But also says something to disabled people that they recognise, that they feel represented by, that they feel that they recognise themselves in that story. And if you can do those two things at the same time, then hopefully you can speak to both parties. Because the thing is, the disabled people are bringing their non-disabled parents with them, or their non-disabled parents. So these two groups do not come up separately. They come up together, and they want to enjoy the same stuff together for different reasons. So you need to make work that speaks to everyone, or speaks to as many people as you can while still being authentic.
without, that's just when you said that, that's just making me think of like Disney Pixar films that are always for two audiences, right?
Yeah.
They're for the parents.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
things that are there for the
Yeah.
parents, and there's things that are there for the kids.
Yeah.
And there's definitely elements that speak to both, and there's definitely elements that do a bit
one or the
like
other.
they speak to one or the other.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, that's really interesting
And
to
I
think
think
of
you
that.
can do that.
You can definitely tread
Yeah,
that line.
you can do that in disability work as well. Yeah, it's tough because they are two different groups, but also they're not. You know, that disabled people can only laugh at disabled jokes.
Yeah.
You know, like, I know that's obvious, but I'm just saying that, you know, we also work bake-off. You know, so yeah.
But it's fun to throw in a few in-jokes.
Yeah. But in doing that, you're also letting non-disabled people in on something that they didn't already know.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do in-jokes in a way that excludes people, that's not fair, and it doesn't really help. You know, we all laugh, but actually, it doesn't really help. There's a time and a place for those sorts of in-jokes. I remember at the first Unlimited, and we had all sorts of cabarets and stuff. And there's a lot of that, because we're finally in the South Bank Centre, we're all going, yeah, fuck you all. But as we get more mature, we need to know that the in-jokes just exclude people. And that's, we're fighting against that, you know. But if you do in-jokes in a certain way, you can make it that everyone's laughing together, and then we can move forward.
Yeah. And if the mainstream is just mass appeal, then, and as you say, if 1 in 5 people is disabled, and many more will experience disability in some way, I think almost 1 in 3 apparently experience mental health in their lifetime.
Yeah.
Then in a way, if it's just about mass appeal, then even just that audience is a huge mass appeal.
Yeah.
It's a huge audience,
Totally.
even just for those people, even if you're not making it for a non-disabled audience. Like, actually...
Completely. And also the comforting thing where, yes, you're always thinking about the audience, and people that say they're not thinking about the audience are talking crap. Because if you don't want to think about your audience, go home and get in your bedroom, you know, that's great. Yeah, thinking about your audience, but you're also telling a story that has to have a bit of truth about it, and a bit of authenticity, and all of that stuff, and humour and pathos, and all of that stuff all mixing together. So I think the more we can focus on just telling the stories, telling our stories in different ways, the more we can move things forward and have conversations and engage people in those conversations. Because that's what will make progress happen. It's not by yelling at people, I don't think. It's about talking to people.
Well, that's a very nice way to end it. On a conciliatory note, a positive note for these terrible times.
Yeah, right.
Robert Softley Gale, thank you so much for your time and for being on the Disability and podcast.
Thank you very much.
Visit greyeye.org and disabilityarts.online for details of productions, events, interviews, opinions, reviews, and learning opportunities.